Today my guest is Jonathan Spinks, founder and CEO of Sourceds. Jonathan just recently moved to Toronto, where he plans to run this global cloud transformation firm and help accelerate its growth in Canada. Jonathan is moving here from Sourceds' headquarters in Sydney, Australia. There, he helped Australia's major banks migrate to the cloud. That caught the attention of Canada's Big Five banks. Now Jonathan wants to help them move to a modern infrastructure too, all while uniting the region with Sourceds' recently launched business in Singapore. And as we learned in our conversation today, Jonathan has some Canadian family ties that might have helped convince him to move around the world too. I'm Fawn Annan. It's time to toe the line on President to President. Well, this is really great, Jonathan. Thank you for coming today to do this. We're excited to have you.
Thank you.
And one of the questions that I have is, I know you started Sourceds in 2010 in Australia.
I think I realized that I thought I'd arrived when I got my job in financial services. I thought that was kind of the pinnacle of where I could do my trade. And during that time, it was very much, doing more with less, and it was, kind of a high pressure environment. But often we found a lot of the challenges in technology came from lack of communication. And we realized that by having a very tight-knit team at the time, we could take that on the road and help other people with their technology challenges. So rather than evolving inside of JP, we just decided to go on the road and see what we could do ourselves. So at the time, we worked very closely with a bunch of DBAs, and I was an infrastructure person. And it was that communication between different lines of business and different technology disciplines that allowed us to have better results in terms of performance tuning large environments. So we quickly got recognized for being able to do that, and we kind of shipped around the world helping JP out with some performance problems around some key systems, and we knew there was value in that and we enjoyed doing it, so it was kind of just an opportunity to take that on the road and do more.
That's great. Well, talking about performance, let's see how you are with darts.
Okay.
Jonathan, your company has a global footprint.
Yeah.
So coming from one jurisdiction and now doing the world, what's the biggest challenge?
Because I understand the boundaries of how the technology actually works.
Right.
And given the technology space really changes profoundly every 6 months these days, it's important to keep up with. It's still very challenging for me. I don't live it as much. I do a lot of email now. I go to conferences, but when I can. So it's really trying to keep up with the IT and marry it together with what I understood before I took this new role on, and then helping some of the C-level in our customers understand that and how it's going to impact their business.
One of the questions I have is, why cloud? There's so much competition there, and what makes you so unique?
Why cloud? I guess when we first started doing this, 2009, 2010, we really didn't think that the enterprise would choose cloud. We thought that the banks would want to keep their data in the data center, where it's safe and sound. And over the subsequent 2 years, we really saw that the cost savings and the innovation was so profound that they couldn't ignore it. So why cloud? I think 8 years in now is a long time in cloud. Majority of our partners, the cloud providers, their staff don't really go more than 4 years. And so I think we've got a long track record now, and I think that being able to say that we have done something versus we can, I think is a big differentiator for our group. We've got some really strong firsts under our belt, so depending on the industry we're talking to, we can really bring out some meaningful evidence and bring it to bear to de-risk a cloud migration.
So just curious, what are the biggest challenges for an enterprise to actually adopt cloud?
Well, fear of change, where it starts. But what we've learned over time is that, obviously in 2018 now, it's a proven technology base. So often we find it's more a people, tools and process problem than technology. And I think in 2018 we can say there's a weight and evidence that cloud is going to have profound impact and value on your business. So it's about getting people, tools and process in line.
So how do you convince large risk-averse companies that they need to act and be more like startups? That's really hard to do.
Yeah, I think market forces are driving in that direction. Customer expectations are increasing. People want a very strong digital and mobile interaction. So people aren't going to branch anymore at banks. They want to interact with a mobile app, for example. And if that's going to be the case, you need to have a very sophisticated development practice to get velocity in terms of how you're delivering those services to clients. I think one of the reasons we've been successful is that, again, we can show that we have done something, not we can do it.
And I understand that you already have 3 of the major banks in Canada as your customer, which is phenomenal.
Yeah, it's I think one of the reasons why I've taken this role rather than just focusing on Canada is that we brought online Singapore 6 to 8 months ago. We've had profound growth in Canada and Singapore, and it was time to kind of try and unite the regions and make sure we're pulling in the same direction.
So how did you end up in Canada?
Well, there's 2 sides to that story. The personal side is that my wife's Canadian. She missed her friends and family, and so that's why we were looking at Canada. The second was we knew that the Canadian banks had been over to see the Australian banks to see what they're doing with technology and how they were innovating. And lucky at that time we'd been involved in a few of those key projects, and so we were helping with those wins. So it was a very easy conversation when we got to the banks here. When they looked at their peers, we were actually involved in those projects. So we'd been doing those projects 5 years prior.
I see.
And so we picked up 5 years in the future, kind of here in Canada, yeah.
So earlier this year you moved to Managing Director, and now you're the CEO.
Yeah.
So tell us about that journey. It's a big one.
Yeah, totally. I mean, as I said before, I think it wasn't, I think it was the right time. I think the group is growing much faster than we all expected. And as cloud really takes hold in the enterprise, it's growing faster. And it's time for me to kind of step up and start to unite the regions, as I said, but also learn to be a better CEO in the interim while we're growing. And it's been a big learning journey for me, and continues to be.
What about work-life balance? How does that work for you?
That's a work in progress, especially if you ask my wife. I'm trying to get the balance, especially with the new role. I think I was very focused on the Canadian problems and the Canadian challenges for our customers and ourselves. And now I have to look at 3 regions again. So it's kind of a lot of scope all of a sudden. And kind of unique as well. I think as far as I understand it, not a lot of Australian companies ever leave Australia. They work in Australia, so we're kind of unique and kind of trailblazing a little bit, so it's kind of nice.
So you're obviously a motorcycle type of guy.
Yeah.
So tell us about that. Do you go into competitions? Do you?
So in Australia, I used to do a lot of track days.
Okay.
It's good. It's good. I think what I've learned about it is that it's monofocus. And it's good for your brain to, if you could only think about one thing, riding a motorcycle. When you're on a motorbike and it's going at speed, you can only think about the bike and the track and the corners. So it's nice to have a monofocus for a while. There's so much going on. The rest of the time, most of the day in the week, I feel very thin, spread very thin. So it's nice to go and do a monofocus activity.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
I've never heard that
Yeah.
Expression before.
Yeah.
A monofocused activity.
Yeah.
And that's what motorbikes are all about.
Yeah, that's right.
It's
Yeah.
really interesting.
Yeah.
What do you think is the most important lesson you've learned in your career to date?
I think the bottom line is everyone's got something to teach you, so you've got to listen. I think a lot of people like to talk and hear themselves talk. I think if you can just shut up and listen sometimes, I think it's a very powerful thing.
Well, this has been wonderful. I thank you so much for taking your time
Thank
to
you.
let us know more about your company. It sounds very exciting. And I'm sure next year you'll be in another Commonwealth country.
Yeah, we'll see.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Cheers.